beautiful day where you could be out galloping among the daffodils. But instead you're here to make yourselves better for the benefit of our adult learners, and I very much appreciate that. So thank you for that.
And I will say, I did have one person email me asking, you meant to do this on Valentine's Day? Yes, I did, I'm sorry. We have got so many additional trainings we're going to be doing that we are finding that, yeah, space in our schedules is kind of starting to get difficult to find.
For us, it's like, this is our building. How come we can't find space for But what's happening, and Kate is exactly right, is that the community is seeing this as more than just a literacy center. They're seeing it as a community center where all types of activities can go on. So for example, we're going to have a youth mentoring class that'll be here on Fridays. We were going to have a parenting class, but the spouse of the parent educator unfortunately was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and so she had to postpone. But yes, and we'll be having computer classes here. We may be having dinners and events like that here, where people see that big area and think, hey, I could have an event here. So the center is evolving as we speak into more than just a place where adult learners come, although that's, of course, attracts many people. But it's evolving into a community center, just a community center. So we're really proud of that. I mean, we're really proud that people see us that way.
Yeah, the community embraces.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes. So we're really honored that people would look at it from that lens, and we're going to do everything we can to support that, because supporting that means more students for us. Once people learn what we're doing and all of that. So.
I'm not being cavalier about your timetable, by the way. Since we are such a small group, we are not going to take a full 2 hours. Again, my fantasy had, I said, a much bigger group. Hello, science, we want to go to chair. So I'm just getting us set up in a smaller room so that we can have a bit of an intimate talk. But we will still, I do still plan to have us at 4 o'clock. Just in case you're wondering, I know it's a special day. So we've got the objectives. You have had a chance to read them. I will read them to you. Why don't we get into, yes, you may.
Thank you.
My pleasure. This is just the presentation that I'm doing. Now, I intend to talk until 3-ish, maybe a little sooner, and then we will take a break. And then I'd like for us to adjourn. Sorry, camera. I would like for us to adjourn to the other room after a short break, where we are going to be putting our hands on some activities and some resources that you really need to know about. And I didn't really intend to be in this room originally, so I'm going to mention our curriculum in about the middle of the talk, which we will get to when we get back out to the other room. Thomas has laid it out so beautifully, I was not going to find that out back here. Okay, so let's go to the screen. Where is it? Oh, why do I always miss that on this new version? Thank you.
You do that too.
What?
Camera.
I do, and I've been doing it for years, since before it became an issue. And I don't know if that makes me a bit weird, but yeah. And usually I have two. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys mind if I snap a photo for this page?
Oh, we have almost all signed the media release form.
Good.
On the break, I needed to do that because we are not intending to catch your face in the video, but we may, and we'll certainly get your hands later when we start doing the activities. So Need you to do that, please. Now listen, if you're not comfortable with that at all, we can get you off to the side and be super careful. I should have mentioned that. No problem.
Okay, good.
All right, so numeracy or math, but again, I hear math, and I know other people hear math, they think numbers, formulas, whatever. Numeracy also includes measures, shapes, and space, and handling data, so charts, graphs, that sort of thing. We'll talk about this more when we talk about learning methods. And I just want to point that out from the start, because some people go, oh, right, charts, graphs, that's numeracy. It is. So we want to be thinking about all the ways that we approach learning with our learners, because there's a lot of stuff that they can maybe be good at, and sometimes they're not good at other stuff. They may be able to organize data into charts very easily. Often I find they can't. And that's really important, because that's going to determine how they can read charts and graphs later when they've got something at work, like any data having to do with maybe budgeting or maybe ordering. So things that they come up with in normal life have got charts and graphs, and they don't think, hey, I can make these myself, or this is saying something to me. A lot of times they see them and they think, that's for somebody else, that's for smart people, or that's for managers or whatever. And they don't understand that there's information there that is accessible to them as well. Now, we also want to realize that numeracy is everywhere in our real world. There is not a day, despite what I say when I'm frustrated, there is not a day that goes by when we don't use numeracy. I know I get to a level and I start, but we do. We, just in planning to get here, you use some sort of numeracy. Didn't you plan your time? Somebody may be showing up on a bus, they needed to plan their time. Were you on the bus? Yeah. Oh, okay, so there we go. Did you have to read a timetable? Were there numbers on it? Yeah. There we are. And also, I want to make sure that we think about with our students the literacy of numeracy. Remember, in real life, no one is going to come up to our learner who works at Home Depot and say, I need wood that is 2 times 3 times 18, and I need X of, which, X times bloody. They're not going to give them the formula. They're going to say words to them. And our learners need to know the literacy of numeracy, what these words mean. If I say, there were 4 pies in the kitchen yesterday, and I've noticed that 2 are gone. So 2 of 4 are remaining. What does the 2 of 4 mean?
Subtraction.
Pardon?
Well, I was going to say 2 out of the whole thing.
Right. And subtract, right, so we've subtracted by 2, we've divided by 2. We've got a ratio there. If we want to think of 2 of 4 are here. So there's a literacy behind the numbers that we need to make sure our learners understand. It's not all about getting to the layout of the numbers themselves, the problems. Now, I'm getting this from our government's Department of Education website. Since today's decisions are based on data, it is equally important, in addition to literacy, that is, for adult learners to develop and strengthen skills in mathematics. Mathematics skills are a gatekeeper for further education and training, and significantly affect employability and career options. Which leads me to this question, and I want you to talk about it amongst yourselves, because I don't want to talk the whole thing. So, how many jobs do you think can be done today with absolutely no numeracy skills? Not just the numbers bit, charts, graphs, spidergrams, mind maps. Hello, welcome. How do you think? I don't hear you.
I was going to say music, but then I can't.
Okay. Oh,
Maybe.
beats, measures. How do we know what sounds good? Don't we usually have measures that are the same beat, right? For lyrics. our objectives and the slides that you want to see. Took them all out of there's one there. So, yeah, and for lyricists, you want the same number of beats per line, don't you? And maybe the same number of lines per. Yeah, yes, oh yeah, there's a lot of numeracy in music. What else can we think of? Music, biggest thing.
Can't think of anything that wouldn't have numbers. I mean,
There is
even your job, you're computing, you're thinking about how many hours you work and how much you're getting paid.
Right.
And your paycheck reflects, I mean, that's all it is numbers.
Right.
And so yeah, there's literally not anything you can do in life without that divorces you from numbers.
Oh, exactly. And not just jobs, but if, again, we talked about the bus timetable, but if you've got a car, how much gas do you have? Now, some of us has got a number on our display. Some of us have a graphic that shows us how little there is. Last car had a percentage, you got 30% of your gas left. Oh, okay, now, that I understand. What if I didn't? How much gas, how much is 30%? 30? Is that good? Is that pounds? Is that gallons? What is 30%? So, right, I agree with you. Nothing doesn't involve numeracy. Love that grammar. Now, I wanted to talk into, before we get started with tutoring tips and resources that involve math specifically, I want to get into the 4 learning methods. I don't know if everybody's had this, maybe you did in school. Let's use it as a reminder because you will be using this with your students. Now, there are 4, a slide with 4 would have been a good idea. What are the 4 learning methods? We've got one here is visual. What do we know? What else? Auditory learning, people who got a kinesthetic. Oh, that's my favorite one too. There's actually a 4th one now. There used to be 3. It was back, now it's bar.
Isn't it kind of a combination of one of the 2 of the other 3?
Yes, multimodal. Now that's actually separate. Multimodal is when you've got more than one. Most people, this is a big clue, most people have more than one learning preference. Like I'm kinesthetic and visual. But also, a lot of people, most people are kinesthetic, at least, if not individually, then along with some other kind of method. So it's getting your hands on stuff. So it's now visual, auditory. There's a 3rd one that's called reading and writing, which used to be part of kinesthetic, but it's also visual, so they made it its own thing. And then, yes, kinesthetic, touching things. And I want us to see this before we talk about our resources and tools that we have here at Each One Teach One, so you can see when we get there, right, oh, I've got a learner I know is a kinesthetic learner. I can use this in our sessions every day. This will really help with fractions. This will really help with ratios, with the pre-algebra, right? So let's be thinking. So visual learning is a learning style which represents a number of concepts. I should say a number of graphic ways information could be presented in words, but you're not. You're putting in some sort of visual stimulus up. As with a map, a spider diagram, which, and spider, does everybody know what a spidergram is?
One of those, they go diagonal.
It's a circle in the middle with some sort of concept, and then springing off of it are other ideas that come from it. So, I do one in literacy, but what can we think of in numeracy? Okay, so if you had multiplication in the middle, then you have your learner. Maybe you have other circles around the middle. So every problem is about, I expected to have a whiteboard so I can write, so sorry. Somebody took my whiteboard. So it's about having the function in the middle, and then each leg that you have off of it is, you might have 1 times 2, and your learner thinks, okay, so 1, 2 times is 2. And you go through all the function, a number of examples to show the function. This will be better when we get out to the other room. There's a whiteboard, sorry, that is getting difficult. What I love to do with literacy is, like, I'll put the number 2 in a circle, And then I have them come up with every word or prefix they know that has to do with to. So by, duo, and then they come up with, after by, they have other little shoot-offs that say bicycle, or they'll fill in binoculars, or things like that, bifocals. So it's growing from a general concept to more specific components of that concept, and then to examples. I'm sure you won't get to do it. Now, charts, graphs, flow charts, label diagrams, symbolic arrows. It's funny to me because I don't just, have you even seen that recently, Karen? Do you see that anymore? It's like information, I might say, from the beginning of a problem flowing to the end, there's an answer. So the symbolic arrow is the function. So if I've got,
So it's kind of like that, are you talking about like something like the actual problem that you're trying to work out and then the answer?
it's more like a pre-algebra thing. If I've got the number 2 and the number 3, and then I've got a symbolic arrow and the number 6, I know something has happened between my number 2 and my number 3. What has happened? 2 what 3 equals 6. Right.
I have this
Times.
was just be helpful
Thank
for
you. Yes. I'm sorry. Just yesterday there was a whiteboard there. I was like, yay, let's get
Yeah,
that.
Thomas used it to, you'll see when you go into the big room, to write some information about.
And the annotation.
Petition. Let me get,
All right. Sorry about this, guys. So in that example, the symbolic arrow would be the function multiplication. And it makes that kind of thinking, and we'll talk about just a little bit about deeper learning. Telling somebody 2 times 3 is 6 is good. To show them that 2 times 3 equals 6, and that's about it. To make them think of the relationship between 2 and 3 to come up with 6 makes them find the function. That's the symbolic arrow. But you can see that it's hard to explain, and it's hard for students sometimes to work out. So I personally haven't seen symbolic arrows in a super long time, but anyway. And I won't read the rest of them, but I do want to say though, white space is another one. Use of white space is going to be important. For a visual learner who is at a lower level, a lot of white space can either be intimidating because they feel they got to fill it all in, or it can be between problems, between word problems or questions. It can be like time to digest. So you have to kind of know your learner, and that's, I'm going to say that about 100 times during this talk. You have to know how your learner responds best and what their particular sort of fears are, if you will. Now, this does not include photographs or movies or videos or anything. That's not visual learning. That's visual stimulus. There's a whole different thing there. It's not visual representation in a graphic sense. So, auditory or oral learning describes a preference for information that is heard or spoken. That is when the teacher stands at the front of the classroom and lectures. And I think of the 4, kinesthetic is the most common, then visual, then auditory. So if you're only speaking to your learner, you may, unless they are an auditory learner exclusively, and they just got to hear more, keep talking about, the War of 1812, then you may wish to be using some other methods. And this includes, group discussions as well, radio, and they don't have, web chat, webinars and things like that, those count. And also talking out loud to themselves. Sometimes you see people, also like me, talking to themselves. It is a matter of reinforcing the information they've already heard. If you know you've got an auditory learner, say stuff to them, they will soak it up, have them say it back to you. And that's a good thing to do anytime anyway, to make sure that they heard you the way you meant to explain the concept. But also, it just reinforces, especially for this auditory learner, what they've already heard. And the act of talking also is physical and it can be kinesthetic too, so keep that in mind. Now, reading and writing is a preference for information displayed as words. This is like, and this reminds me of my education as a kid, where the teacher would stand at the front of the classroom. I had one reading teacher in particular would just write notes, and you had to write the notes too. And that never helped me, because I didn't have the feel of what she was saying when I looked at my writing. It's just not my learning style. Other people slap it up there, I'll read it, and and I'll write my notes, and that'll make me feel good. That's not been something that I experienced. But how about any of you? Do you read or write, or
I have to
learn?
I have to take notes like when I read, especially particularly textbooks. Like I'm in school right now, and I have to take notes when I read. Otherwise, I just forget everything that I read.
You know what? I'd like to. I will actually mark up a book pretty well. In fact, I don't even share some of my books sometimes.
And I don't write like in the textbooks. I don't usually highlight. That doesn't help me, but I write it down. And I write stuff down on paper.
Oh, all right. Oh, excellent.
I highlight a little bit, but not a lot. I prefer notes as well. And I notice my husband, he's in school. He doesn't write any notes. He just reads it. He just reads. And he has a lot of noise. He watches these. One of his favorite networks is Sci-Fi. And I don't know how in the world he reads the text he's reading with all the. He cannot study without this background noise. I don't know how he does it.
I cannot study in silence. I can't.
Well, he can't. I can. I can study in absolute silence. I can. I prefer it, actually. Absolute silence.
More easily distracted. Like
Yes.
it's totally silent.
Yes.
But if I have background noise, then I don't get
Well,
distracted.
he has the background noise. It stays. It's amazing to me. And he doesn't make notes. He just reads. Yeah.
Some people memorize instantly, some people have it forget.
Mhm.
They can see it one time, and I can't do that. That's not me.
I think
Happy
he
to with
does that. He gets it pretty much on the first read and just goes on from there. Yeah, it's amazing to me. Totally different study style. Totally different.
So here's kinesthetic. Now, how many people have heard of kinesthetic learning before? We know at least two.
No.
Everybody? Oh, okay. All right, good. I wasn't sure. So this is perceptual preference, a perceptual preference related to use of experience and practical knowledge, so that's simulated or real. These are demonstrations. These are simulations. Yes, videos. I put in movies of real things. I really was thinking documentary. That would kind of probably be a better word than movies. Have them see, feel, do, if you've got a kinesthetic learner. And we will see that in the second half of the 2 hours when we go out to the other room, we'll have a number of kinesthetic things. And don't laugh, because I used to have a couple of dyslexics and I had somebody with dyscalculia. So everything I've got is kind of fuzzy or squishy. It's got some sort of texture to it and it's colorful. The more parts of the brain we access when we are delivering our lessons, the better we are stimulating memory. Because we're using more parts of the brain to get the concept across, the knowledge is stored in more places. So if they can feel a texture on their hands, or, for some people, I had a student with dyslexia, we used to write in wheat flour with his finger so that he could feel the texture while he was moving his finger and arm. The muscles that need to be moved to get to do the activity, plus the feel of the thing, plus the colors stimulate all these different parts of the brain. Kinesthetic is really, really easy to add to your lessons. So people with a strong kinesthetic preference learn from the experience of doing something. And here's the thing with adults, a lot of times they've already done it. If you're doing numeracy for low-level learners, I'll talk a lot about math and money in the second part of the workshop because people already know about it. Plus, it's easy to make it kinesthetic. We've got some fake money, and somewhere in my backpack I've got some real money that you touch, that you feel. There's a weight to it. There's a color. There's a smell to new money. There are all these things going on that are actually helping the learning process. So, just take a few minutes. We're a small group. I think we can do this all together at this table. So take a few minutes to talk about various learning methods and how each may be used to support a learner, that should say learner, with low-level math skills. How would you use visual stimulus in a session with a learner with low-level skills?
I think you say the same. Visual, there's always some kind of representation, you know, like a picture, especially if they really are a true beginner, because we have to have something to associate with, you know?
Yes, and I'll tell you, I was in a workshop recently for the new GED. They were kind of trying to set tutors up for how to think about the new GED. And the one thing that the speaker said, and he's the vice president in charge of designing the program, he said the one problem most people have on the GED is setting the problem up. So with lower level learners who aren't at GED level, but for lower level learners, if they sketch out what is being asked, it's often very helpful. A lot of times they think they just have to do it, it has to be numbers. No, they can make, if you, well, you would build it with them. If you make a chart, or if you make a diagram, or if you just write, you know, Bob is walking to George's house, and that is 1 mile, and it takes Bob 15 minutes to get there, or 15 minutes maybe per half mile. Sketch out Bob, sketch out George, draw a line, make 1 mile, and then he can think, or she can think, well, if it takes 15 minutes to walk a half mile, and that really is a saunter, that's just slow, but then here's a half mile, draw a line at a half mile, and it represents better the information for the learner, so they don't have just these words to try to hold in their mind, and here's Bob here, and I'm trying to imagine George, and I don't know how long a mile is. Draw it out for them. Show them in a little diagram or a little picture, and you don't have to do it well. I am terrible at art, but I will draw anything out that I can to give a visual stimulus to a learner who's struggling. Don't give the answer, but give them something to help them to base their thinking on. That is an excellent point. What else?
I know, like in my math class that I take right now, it's for teaching.
Oh.
It's for teaching math to elementaries. It's for K through 8. Actually, it's 4 through 8, the second semester of it. But they showed us there's word problems where, particularly younger kids, like kindergarten through second, third grade, if you give them a word problem, they just draw pictures, draw the pictures, and they figure out and they count to see how many it is.
Right.
What the answer is.
Right, and we've got many whiteboards I'll show you that are just white on one side, and then when you turn them over, they've got squares, a graph, and people keep asking me, well, what would I do with that? Well, let me tell you. You can draw out, if I'm asking what is 1/10, you can visually represent that for your learner. Draw a box around 10 squares and color in 1 square. It helps them understand the concept behind the numbers. You're not just teaching them to memorize something to regurgitate later on the test, because with the new GED, and low-level learners are GED students, they're just a bit further away, that is going to be required. Analytical thinking, they have to be able to understand the concept, not just the numbers. Those are excellent points. Auditory skills, that should be kind of easy.
Can we back up just a second?
Sorry, yeah.
No, not.
Okay.
Working with a low-level student in preparation for the GED, you're talking about these visual representations. Now, my understanding is that this is all done on the computer, the GED. How does those visual tools integrate with their actual taking of the test and the fact that it's timed?
Yeah, and that's one of the, this has come up, and it did come up at the GED Roadshow. Hey, you've made it more difficult. And their thinking is that there will be and I think he did say a piece of scratch paper. So there's very little that is provided, and that they can sketch out themselves And in fact, it was encouraged, and we all had to sketch out a problem for ourselves, but it's strongly encouraged to get them, because those are higher level learners, get them off of visual representations, get them into the setup and the execution, because A, there's not going to be a whole lot of time, and B, there's not a whole lot of space. So that is my answer to that. They just have made it more difficult. And the whole thing of everything being online, on a computer, I can't even speak to, because, I mean, auditory learners are kind of muffed again because there's no speaking, there's no sound. So there are a number of ways that this kind of puts people at a disadvantage.
It just seems like it forces everybody into accepting a certain learning style, and it makes no accommodation for people who can't fit into that round hole.
There is an alternative version, or maybe some alternative version, but I think it's just one, for people who have demonstrated difficulty learning. And from what I understand, it is super difficult to get your learner registered as that. You have to be proven dyslexic, proven dyscalculic, I think that's the word. You have to have a known difficulty for your learner.
A diagnosed difficulty.
It's a diagnosed, yeah. So I wish I could help you with that, because I have opinions, but we won't put them on video. No, good, very good point.
No, it's exactly the way you characterize it. It forces everyone into one way of receiving the material.
My way or the highway?
My way or the highway.
Little bit.
Well, even at public schools, like when you have a student who is learning to say that they have dyslexia or ADHD or whatever, it's, in my experience, my son has ADHD and he's had some difficulties with learning and behavioral problems. And it took me 3 years to actually get the school to work with me and do what was needed to help him.
Okay. Yeah, that's not.
And imagine those students that don't have that type of advocacy.
Right. Right.
There are students now, basically. Many of them are our students. We're all grown up.
Right, exactly. That's what happens.
Before, the terms, learning disabilities and, all the other labels that were given, I remember, for auditory, where they would give us like a cassette card, a record player with those pictures and things like that on there, and then a little card before you. So you hear the sound, you find the picture, so you're using visual, auditory, using using all of it, but then you really are you're forced to use all of it in a way, in a sense. Your visual, auditory, and even speaking.
Mm-hmm. I once heard a high school teacher of mine she was my French teacher, and I think she must have been an English teacher before. And I heard her walking down the hallway with another teacher saying, I don't know why, but I've noticed students do so much better in French than in English class. And why should that be? They already know English. But the thing is, with learning a foreign language, I noticed in my experience learning French in her classes, we used a lot of auditory stuff and a lot more pictures, and there was a lot more writing and doing there were every single possible method was used, sometimes even kinesthetic, because she liked to bring in baguettes and stuff like that, and have us, break the bread, but there's a certain, width they have to be if you're Parisian, and crazy. She really loved Paris, but she did. She managed to work all 4 methods in, and I figured that's why. Because who does that in English class? Anyway, just a thought. So,
let me say that if anyone has any ideas on auditory material that you come across, we'll purchase it or whatever, to help those with the auditory learning styles. So that's a great point.
There are videos.
Okay.
And I couldn't tell you what the name of it is right now. I saw it just in observation last semester in a classroom, where it was a video, and they had like this little I know it was for kids, not adults, but they had a little character and they had person talking, they were working out math problems together.
Well, if you can
Khan
find that,
Academy.
Khan
Academy?
No.
Okay.
no, but Khan Academy, that brought that to mind. There's the
Wow.
Khan Academy website that offers videos at low levels too.
Yes, and YouTube has an entire channel. I meant to look up the name for you, but if you go to YouTube and look up their channels that they have, they've got one that's on education, and there's just a slew of videos that are not childish, that do, in fact, I think there's a channel within the channel, however it works, that is for adult learners, and I meant to find it for you guys. I'll try to find it and post it for you on the report board out here.
And there's another one, I wish I could remember the name. I think it's something about like Waterford. Waterford, it's a math program, and it's all visual, and it's on the computer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I'm in math for kids, so
That's
it's
okay.
geared towards kids.
And we do try, and you'll see in a later slide, I do try not to encourage that, but if that's the resource that meets the learner's needs, then that is what we will use, absolutely.
And Khan Academy, for those that will be interested, is KHAN, Khan Academy. And I believe it's Khan, I can't recall if it's khanacademy.org or .com, but
I think it's on our.
it's on our list of online resources. And it is excellent. It has, the little vignettes, based on the subject matter. So that is one resource I encourage you to take a look at.
Yeah, it will be on the Literacy Links form that you got, the handout that you got at training. I have got an additional education links handout that I'll be giving to you later. Khan Academy is on the first one, the one that you received in your training, not thinking there's some other good tips too. So, reading and writing, how can you use reading and writing reference for information displayed as words? In talking with rhymes. What's that about? How can we use that? Is that valid? Does it work?
I think it really works because the Lord children, we always got it country, but there's somewhere along the way you have to use your abstract. So,
Okay.
What was the one I listened to? Text-based
PowerPoint? And you are welcome to bring your computer in or borrow a computer. We've got laptops here. PowerPoint and the internet. Internet is great because it's interactive. I always love the internet and software, educational software. Lists. Why not have them list information? What kinds of what do I know? When I've added something, what do I know about it? List some things for me that you've done. What is 2 plus 2? Give me some ideas as to what 2 plus 2 means. Or list how you can use this. Or what are the functions that you remember? We talked about them last week. There's addition and what are the others? Have them write them down. And what I love to do, and I'll show you this also with the whiteboards. Now, this is me as a tutor. This has not got to be you. I really love it, and I'll go on and do great stuff. But when I build a session with the learner and they're writing on the mini whiteboard, means they can erase it. But a lot of times, a lot of people can't erase their mistakes, and they feel like that's the problem they're here because they can't go back and do math very differently or what have you. So mini whiteboard. Get the whole lesson written down, right? Whatever kind of riffing you've been doing with them. And I like to take photos with my phone. I take it home, I print it out. I bring it back to them. They've already written it, now they're reading it. It stimulates memory, this is work they already did. And it also serves as kind of an opener for the session that you're about to do. Last week, remember when we did this? Remember when you figured out what 5 words mean and I didn't say anything? It was so fantastic. High five. Remember this? It's been written by them. It'll be read by them again. It calls the whole session up in the mind, ideally, before you get started. There's a lot that you can write, and a lot that you are doing. Kinesthetic. So, doing stuff, touching stuff. How can we use kinesthetic learning with our low level learners?
It's head block.
Absolutely, we've got some out there too. Fantastic. Did you hear base 10 blocks? Math blocks, we'll see them, and I'll show when we get to the other room. What else?
Well, any kind of little items that you like put into groups to add, subtract, multiply, and divide.
Tinsel balls, I've got tinsel balls. People always laugh, and it's a good little opener. I can go, I know, I can do whatever I have. But there's that touch thing again, there's the texture, there's the color, there's the moving things. What do we need? Let's really start to think, what do we need when we say divide 6 in half? Well, let me show you. Here are 6 things divided in half. Now, most people will be able to go, half means the same on one side as the other side, and they'll divide them up. If not, you show them. Then you bring them back together and say, no, you show them, and have them count them out again. If you're working with money, have them count the money out before you start working. I have $3 that I use today. If we're working on multiple percentages, fractions, and decimals, I put out not usually nickels, because that's to 120 and stuff that they're maybe not ready for. But pennies, I want you to count out 10 pennies for me. And then here are the dimes. I want you to count out 10 dimes and count out 4 quarters. That's $1. Okay. So we get into a whole conversation of making them touch them, count them out for you. And then you'll just act like they're helping you, but actually what they're doing is you're getting them ready for the session in a kinesthetic way. Anything else? Kinesthetic. Going on. So, some resources. Now, I brought these in. I flipping love these things, and I put them down here. This is called a Tarsia puzzle. Well, I picked them up, and I threw them somewhere. Are they my little yes? Thank you so much. And I'm going to tell you right now, I cut them in a roll. I'm sorry about that. So we've got one and then part of another one. This is called a Tarsia puzzle. Now, there is a free software download if you are interested. It is both free, and it is actually like Tarsia.org or something like that. But you can look it up on Google. And so what the software does, and that's our little visual that we've got up on the screen as well. What the Tarsia puzzle does is it puts valuations that are equivalent together. So for example, we've got 1/100 right here, and that only, in this puzzle, 1/100 only equals 1%. It doesn't equal 34%, it doesn't equal 7/10, it only equals 1%. So your learner, and I should have said, these would be cut to pieces. So little pie-shaped pieces, I meant to say that, sorry. But I gave you a full one. So you cut them into pieces. Your learner goes 1/100 is the same as 1%, and they put those two sides together. Then you go, okay, so we've got these two pieces put together here. We've got the 3%. What does that go with? 3%. That's like 300. That's also the same as 0.3. But I am 0.03. So then they put those two sides together. So what I would do is with Tarsia, you can either find Tarsia puzzles, and this is usually interesting. I'll be honest with you. You'll be on English websites, but numbers are the same in English and in American. If you can find some templates that are already ready for you, or you just can make your own. Now, I made this one for a lower level learner. Not that low, some of that's not too easy, but, and then I cut them out, and I laminate them, and I cut those out, and then I can take them, stick them in my bag, and do whatever with them, and the learner puts them together. They know their wrong answer, if they've got a case that doesn't fit, or if they've got a shape that looks anything other than like this. These puzzles can be made quite large, quite complex, with inner pieces and outer pieces. They can be made as complex as you want to make the math. You can do algebra equations if you want. Here's the equation, find the answer. The cool thing about the puzzle is, especially for low-level learners, they know when they are done, they will have this shape. So when they get here, they know they've done it. You can kind of step away if you need to get the next lesson ready, or to use your reflection on your session. Give them some time to work it. They know that at the end, they will have a piece that they can recognize, that they'll understand. So anyway, I love these. I use them all the time. I've got some bigger ones that I think I'm pretty sure I've got my bag with me today. Math blocks we mentioned. Math wheels. We all remember those from school. We've got. I know I put colored chalk. Isn't that sweet? Colored markers and whiteboard. Colored chalk. I mean, you can find a chalk. Oh my gosh. Marbles, balls. I've seen people do corn. The bag of corn. A teacher had a bag of corn that she kept with her everywhere, and it's something to move. It's something kinesthetic and visual. Recipes. Remember measurements, measuring tapes. Why not? Tarsi puzzles, money, real or fake. Here at each one, we've got some play money, but they can use coins and bills. Like I said, I just bring $3 in a number of different coins, and we just drop them out. Because adults know money. Now, kids, you might lose them. They probably would not really fully engage with this, but you bring a few dollars in, you set it out, and you say, show me half a dollar. Yes. Oh, are you? And they are.
That's part of the curriculum is coins and.
Kids have these days. I guess I'm thinking of mine. All right. Okay. So also more resources. Course and workbooks. We've got those whiteboards, mini and wall. Now, I really love, and eventually we will have more whiteboards. We're new in this building. We'll have more on the wall. I really love standing up at a board with a learner. If they are okay with their work being possibly seen by other people, it's fantastic. Because when you stand up, what? Your blood, what? It circulates a little bit faster, a little bit more energy, and when your blood circulates, it brings more oxygen to the brain. You actually have a better learning situation. Standing up, making sure they're standing straight. You always have a learner who wants to kind of stand up, and then diagram, get the oxygen to the head. I love doing this for learners when they start maybe getting a bit tense. When they get to a level like Carolyn always mentions, multiplication. For some people, that is a barrier. Addition, I get, we're putting stuff together. Subtraction, I get, making it apart. But it doesn't occur to them. Multiplication and division work in similar ways. So there's this wall that comes up. If they look like they're getting a bit tense, or if they seem like they're struggling, get them standing up. And I don't even make any bones about it. I teach my learners mantras. So I make them do breathing. But I have them do deep breathing, a few, I'm not even kidding, a few breaths, get the oxygen flowing, have them do a mantra. Slowly, pull the oxygen out, and then write. Again, it's also kinesthetic because you're moving around a bit, so there's some activity there. It's fantastic. Mini whiteboards work as well, and it's private because you're writing at your table. Don't forget websites, Khan Academy, etc. Now, I did put this one, skillsworkshop.org. It is an English website, so if you grab anything from it, the spelling is going to be different. So just be careful if you're going to use one of those, but it has got a resource for anything you could possibly want. Teachers, it's kind of like a weekly thing where teachers build resources, use them in their classrooms. When they find them successful, they throw them on Skills Workshop. Now, Skills Workshop does actually vet them, so it's not just annual piece of work, but actually good materials that you're going to be using in your classroom all the time. And they do a lot with measuring recipes. You don't have to actually bake cookies, but you can make something with measurement, even if it's food coloring or something. Learners own cell phones. Gets them working with technology, gets them engaged with something that they understand. keeps them from having to write more, have them text you answer, and especially if you're working in a group, whoever can text me the answer, the correct answer, gets the chocolate kiss on the table, what have you. What other resources can you think of that you might have either available here, or that you might bring from home? Again, you don't have to, we've got pretty much everything you need here, but you know, I always remember that. Best we can. You can write, that you can use, that you can build, that you can measure, that you can draw out. How can you use colors? I've got colorful highlighters that I use. I don't like markers. They're called Zs. I know these really great colors and stuff. Charts and graphs right there. Sponging numbers. If you've got somebody who's got, and we'll talk about dyscalculia in a minute. If you've got somebody who's got dyscalculia, it helps them have something. Again, it's got texture, squishing, touching, and they can trace it with their finger. This is two. This is two. Gets them engaged with the number, if not the meaning, if not the concept, then it's just the number, and gets stuck. Because if you're down at that level, and that is a lower level learner, because dyscalculia is a very, it's like dyslexia to people in literacy. Dyscalculia is in math, if we don't understand numbers. Sometimes they can't even remember them. Which one is it the one that's straight up and down, or is it the one that's two circles? This one. Have them feel it, draw it out. What else? I thought you'd be so sick of hearing me talk.
Sometimes a comparison can be made because when you're working with the workbooks and you skip over and you go to skill workshop at the website. Well, what I find is that sometimes textbooks carry information that's slightly outdated, and then when you go to a website, you learn a totally different concept.
Oh yeah,
Information is presented.
And that's the thing. If you find that your learner is struggling, and sometimes it's just that they're trying that hard to learn, but sometimes it's because the concept is maybe not clear to them yet. Yeah, use a variety of sources. If you can use a graph and a drawing and saying the same thing a number of different ways to like to redundant, if not repetitive. And why is that? To say that same concept in a number of different ways to get the brain cells differently and form the concept more clearly. Yeah, do that. Websites, all right, Khan Academy, I had a student. I thought Khan Academy was fabulous. I built a whole session around it. It did not work for her. We went right on to some other website, and damn, I thought it was a bit kiddie, a bit childish, but it worked for her. Do what works. Absolutely. I can see your growth. Well, I was going to have a break in a little bit more time, but why don't we break now? We'll come back, we'll zip through this calculator, but I do want to mention it a bit more. And then we'll go into some tutoring tips. Then we'll go out and how we feeling? Thoughts, questions, comments? Anybody need to fix their eyes? It's warm in here, isn't it? There are snacks and there are bottles of water along the wall in the bay. Everybody's been in the bay before, so off to the left side when you're facing the building. I'm going to get some stuff set out for when we go up there. Video release.